Hey Formula One fans, is Red Bull playing with fire? While the grid is heating up with McLaren getting closer, Red Bull has decided to go all in on the evolution of the RB21. But could this risky strategy backfire or be the key to another title? F1 news is coming in hot, so don't waste any time. Subscribe to the channel to stay updated on all things Formula One. Just hit the subscribe button below the video. It's quick, free, and no sign-up is needed. This is F1 Fastline News, your go-to channel for daily Formula One updates. Let's get straight to it. Today, I'm bringing you an exclusive analysis on Red Bull and the implications of their strategy to evolve the RB21 for the 2025 season. Let's be clear. We're looking at a team that's conquered almost everything in recent years, but now they're facing a completely different scenario. The dominance that once seemed unshakable is now being challenged, especially with McLaren posing a growing threat. And believe me, Red Bull isn't ignoring that pressure. Christian Horner, always with a pragmatic view, pointed out that next year's car will be an evolution of the current RB20. That gives us a lot to think about. Is the decision to avoid a more aggressive overhaul really the best choice? I have my doubts, and I bet many of you do too. We're talking about a team that's already tasted the bitter side of complacency. Playing it safe could be dangerous, especially when McLaren is closing in fast. Horner said that in the world of Formula One, long-term means something like 2.5 months. Sure, that's true. But is it enough to rely on a gradual evolution when the competitive landscape changes with every race? Red Bull is in a tricky spot. They've got to balance developing the current car with the challenges of rolling out their own engine by 2026. But isn't there a middle ground? Something bolder for 2025 that wouldn't jeopardize future plans? Now, about this car evolution. A lot of the RB20's components were carried over from the RB19. It makes you wonder if we're looking at a strategy that's too conservative. Formula One is all about finding that thousandth of a second, that tiny detail that makes the difference. It's true that the budget cap makes radical changes harder, but McLaren isn't sitting around waiting. They've already shown they can bring updates that really impact performance. Another crucial point Horner mentioned is the challenge of their own engine project for 2026. This is Red Bull's biggest undertaking right now, and it makes sense. After all, building an engine division from scratch is a monumental task. They've already got 600 people working on it, in a Red Bull culture that's always been geared towards excellence in chassis development. But let's be honest here, engines aren't built overnight, and the transition could be pretty painful in the short term. Is Red Bull underestimating how much this could affect their 2025 performance? The partnership with Ford Motor Company is an interesting aspect, and it seems to be going well, but it's still a question mark how this collaboration will play out. Let's remember, this is one of the most complex areas in Formula One. Integrating the 2026 engine with the chassis will be a huge challenge, and any mistake could be costly. Horner mentioned they're already seeing the benefits of having chassis and engine engineers working side by side. That's definitely an advantage. But it also raises the question, is all this focus on 2026 taking attention away from what really matters now? After all, 2025 could be a pivotal year to keep their momentum. Red Bull can't afford to relax with the competition so close. One important detail we can't overlook is the impact of wind tunnel limitations. With the new regulations, top teams like Red Bull have less time for wind tunnel testing, which further limits their ability to make significant changes to the car. This restriction could be another reason why Red Bull opted for evolution instead of revolution with the RB21. But is that choice too risky? We know in Formula One, if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. Looking at the bigger picture, it's hard not to question some of Red Bull's decisions. What seems clear is that the team is betting on a long-term game, mainly aiming for 2026. But what happens if 2025 turns out to be a year of frustrations? A bad season could even damage the team's morale, and we all know how crucial that is for success in F1. What worries me is whether this strategy will really hold off McLaren and other teams climbing up the grid. Ferrari, with its never-ending promise of a comeback, can't be ruled out either. Is Red Bull truly preparing for a fierce battle next year? Or are they relying on the hope that their current package will still be competitive enough? Here's my take. Is Red Bull underestimating the threat of 2025? It's easy to look at their recent success and think that an evolution of the current car will be enough. But in Formula One, history has shown us that the margin for error is tiny. One wrong decision can see a championship slip away. Speaking of challenges, we have to talk about Red Bull's wind tunnel. Recently, Christian Horner shed light on a problem that many fans might not know about: the limitations of the wind tunnel Red Bull uses in Bedford. And believe me, these limitations could be directly affecting the performance of the current RB20. What Horner revealed is that the wind tunnel Red Bull has been using since they entered Formula One back in 2005 is no longer up to today's standards. And that's a big deal. We're talking about a structure that's over 60 years old, and despite being modernized over the years, it doesn't offer the precision and efficiency that other teams already have. Could this be costing Red Bull the dominance that once seemed guaranteed? And what's even more curious is that, according to Horner, the decision to build a new wind tunnel was delayed for a long time. Why? Well, there was a discussion in Formula One about banning wind tunnels altogether and replacing them with CFD, computational fluid dynamics. For those who don't know, CFD is a technology that simulates the aerodynamic behavior of cars using computers, without the need for physical tests. Adrian Newey, the genius behind Red Bull's cars, held off on pushing for a new tunnel until that issue was resolved. But eventually, the FIA decided to keep wind tunnels, and Red Bull had no choice but to invest in a new facility. Now think about it. We're in an era of Formula One where every detail matters. A difference of thousandths of a second can separate a win from a loss. And Red Bull, using a wind tunnel that's over 6 decades old, is clearly at a disadvantage. Horner pointed out that as cars become more sophisticated, these fine margins become increasingly important. So the limitations of the Bedford facility have started to show. And what does this mean in practice? First, the tunnel can only operate between 5 and 25 degrees Celsius. Anything below or above that, and it becomes inefficient. For a team that's chasing every millimeter of aerodynamic advantage, that's a huge problem. And it's even more concerning when we remember that other teams, like Aston Martin, are already investing in new and more modern wind tunnels. Sure, Red Bull has already started building a new wind tunnel at their Milton Keynes factory, but it won't be ready until 2026. This means the team will have to deal with these limitations until then. And now, with the championship so tight, could these disadvantages cost Red Bull titles? Let's not forget, McLaren is creeping up right behind them. Can Red Bull really afford to wait another 2 years to solve this problem? These are the questions the team needs to answer. Horner admitted that due to the budget cap, the current tunnel is grossly inefficient. This only adds more pressure for Red Bull to work miracles with what they have until the new tunnel is ready. But will it be enough? Can the team stay on top with infrastructure that's inferior to their direct rivals? Here's a challenge. We're so used to seeing Red Bull dominate that we forget even the biggest teams face challenges. And this might be the biggest challenge Red Bull has faced since they entered Formula One. The transition to a modern wind tunnel is necessary, but the time until it's ready could be a delicate period. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Red Bull is making the right choice by betting on an evolution of the RB21 for 2025? Or do you think a more radical approach is needed to face the growing threat of McLaren and other rivals? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to know what you think. And of course, if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, what are you waiting for? Here we talk about Formula One with no filters, strong opinions, and lots of information. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and join this passionate community of fans. If you liked this video, leave a like and share it with your fellow Formula One fans. Let's grow this amazing Formula One fan community together. See you next time, speeding towards victory.